Reading from the Caitanya-bhāgavata Antya-khaṇḍa, chapter, I think 3 or 4, I forgot, text 101. Yāṅhāra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yāṅhāra māyāya jiva pāsari āpanā, pāiyāche saṁsāra-vāsanā. The living entities have forgotten who they are. They become conditioned and have developed material desires simply by the influence of his illusory energy. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 20:117, it is stated, this is a purport, because it's a famous verse, Krishna Buli se jiva anadi bahirmukha ata eva maya tari deha samsara dukkha. Forgetting Krishna, living entity, has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmulatam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivas Adi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So just a little background. Lord Chaitanya is in a place called Ramakeli. I think it's in West Bengal. He's on his way. This is Antya Lila, and his Antya Lila is the last 18 years of his life. And he settles in Puri, but he takes a visit to Vrindavan. Just like I'm hoping to take a visit to Vrindavan. I'm still waiting for my visa, sitting on the edge of my seat, but at the same time having the foundation that Krishna will protect me. And that means whatever happens is best. So even sometimes on this particular one, I seem to have some attachment. Of course, it's Vrindavan. I've lived in Vrindavan for 45 years. But still, in the background, and this is the beauty of Krishna consciousness, in the background is always my understanding. The ultimate understanding is whatever Krishna does is best. And he is the controller. But it's natural to want to go to Vrindavan, to see the places. At the higher stage of bhava, it's one of the symptoms that one wants to go to Vrindavan, wants to see the holy places. Of course, most of my life is in Vrindavan. I'm 71, 45 years of my life have been in that place. That's where so many of my friends are. And so many. Well, but anyway, Lord Chaitanya wanted to go to Vrindavan. He stops at this place, Ramakeli. This is the place of Sanatana and Rupa. I don't have to explain that again. But somehow he becomes inspired. God can become inspired. God is the supreme enjoyer, and part of and that enjoyment is love and connection with God. And it's not static, as Prabhupada said, it's ecstatic. So there's very many spontaneous feelings, and Lord Chaitanya just becomes completely absorbed in chanting the holy name, to the extent that no one can even talk to him. But here, the king, because Ramakeli, because Sanatana and Rupa are the home minister and chief minister, so they're right. Maybe they're in the suburbs of the capital, but in the capital is Nawab Hussain Shah, who has broken temples and broken deities. And somehow or other, when one of the policemen see Lord Chaitanya from the Hindu tradition dancing ecstatically and attracting so many followers, he reports to the king, but somehow or other, the king hears this description and begins to contemplate. People only listen to me because I have power of fear. I can demand respect, but this person can command respect. Okay, I'm back. But we lost a lot of people. What happened?
I don't know what happened, but everybody got dumped. I got dumped too.
Some other people also get, it seems like they're coming back on. Something happened. Okay, I'm seeing now they're coming back on. So somehow he is commanding that type of respect. And not only that, but the descriptions of him are of an otherworldly, extraordinary person. There's a science called phrenology. No, phrenology is studied physiognomy, that certain bodily features can be very auspicious, like arms that are kind of long, and it's a term. And Lord Chaitanya had that. He was very, very stunning. It was Bengal, and he was very tall, and Dira Janapriyo Piyakaro Namatsuro Pujatao. That he was he was dear to both the gentle and to the ruffians. Nirmatsuro Pujitao, and he's worshipable, not Namatsara, because he doesn't have any desire to lord over the world. Therefore, he doesn't have any envy of anybody else. And people pick up that, and even people who are a little bit adira, not sober, they sometimes can recognize the power of a saintly person. Well, anyway, but still people are concerned, and they send one Brahmin to tell Lord Chaitanya, don't chant here, don't stretch your luck, as they say in English. This person could lose his mind at any moment, just like Kamsa. He had a moment of sanity, and he listened to Krishna's father, Vasudeva, that Vasudeva said, I'll give the 8th child to you. It's not my wife that's going to kill you. It's not the other children. I'll give them. Don't worry. And so, but then the ministers came, and the bad association came and influenced them again. It's not so difficult to incite an egotistical, narcissistic personality. You just have to say something. This person is a threat, to invoke their envy, to invoke their fear. Not difficult to do, even if there's a moment of sanity. So they go and they try to tell Lord Chaitanya, but Lord Chaitanya is evam vratasva priya nama krita jitanu raga. He's so absorbed, oblivious, the level of kirtan samadhi. He doesn't even recognize as an outside world. He's with Radha Krishna, and he's chanting and dancing. There's some faint view that there's something else that's going on. And if he opens his eyes, he sees his devotees in so many devotional feelings, and the extraordinary bliss of Sankirtan, the sense of community, the sense of compassion So many emotions are coming from his heart. And with that, there comes a faith. Krishna will protect us. Let us have no fear. There is no fear. So this kirtan goes on, and now Vidavendasta is, out of his own sweet will, Sri Shachinandana, the crest jewel of all living entities, continued to perform. Oh, that's the next verse. He continued to perform Sankirtan, but it describes what happened to me. Oh yeah. So Vrindavan Das Thakur is describing the importance and potency of this Sankirtan. And the living entity survives simply by his potencies. The Vedas glorify him as eternally pure, supreme Brahman. And then this verse, the living entity has forgotten who they are. Krishna, they have become conditioned and have developed material desires simply by the influence of the illusory energy. Now, this is an interesting point. Now, this is where I think a lot of people get confused and waste a lot of time, in my opinion, because it's described, the living entity is a nadi. He is without beginning. How can the living entity not be without beginning? Because the living entity is part of God, and God is without beginning. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur discusses this, and a lot of people miss this point, is that you can't discuss transcendence through material time. Transcendence is an eternal reality. Every event is happening always, for all time, because God is not controlled by time. If he was controlled by time, he wouldn't be God. That makes a lot of sense. That's what God means. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said you can't discuss these things through the dirt of words. So sometimes there are explanations of it. But without having the realization of it, it's very difficult to describe. I was just thinking in the second chapter of Jiva Dharma, it's very interesting. It describes that that acharyas sometimes they preach relative truths. They sometimes preach relative truth. The example is Shankaracharya. He was acharya, but there's a reason he preached the way he did, even though it wasn't true. And then there was Buddha. His preaching was a timely necessity. It wasn't an absolute fact. Then it's very interesting. Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes on to explain that, but this concept that I'm explaining here, that bhakti is innate within the soul, he said this is not a relative truth. This is meant to be spread from all time. And he explains it in many ways. But then he says, but until you come to the platform of samadhi, you won't understand this fully. You won't understand this fully until you come to the platform of samadhi. The very nature that God is inconceivable is a reasonable conception. If there is an ultimate reality, there is reality. We see there's a reality here. And there's two choices. Did reality start at a particular time, or it had no beginning? There's two choices that are mutually exclusive. Each one of those choices, one of them must be true, but both of them are beyond our ability to wrap our brains around them. Can we understand that there was nothing and then there was something? That there was a beginning and there was nothing before that? But can we understand that there's no beginning and things go on and on and on and on and go back and back and back and back and back, and there's no beginning, but it has to be one. And therefore, in most spiritual traditions, they don't discuss origins because it's hard to discuss, because it's without beginning. But here it says, forgetting Krishna, the living entity. Forgetting Krishna is a point in time. But you have to describe it within time. How else are you going to describe it? So there just takes a little bit humility to actually try to understand these points and understand that you can't understand these points. And that it's a reasonable conception that God is achintya, that God is inconceivable. Because everything's coming from him, including time and space. So he's not limited by time and space, but we are limited by time and space. And therefore we perceive things, and our reason works on the basis of cause and effect, which is phenomena that happens within time and space. But this is how they're explaining. Somehow or other we have forgotten. Somehow or other we have forgotten. In other words, somehow or other, although it's a nadi, we are responsible. That may be an eternal event also. The choice we have, the choice we made, may also be an eternal event. Somehow or other we have forgotten, and therefore we're responsible. We become conditioned by material desires, by the influence of his illusory energy. When you want to be something which you cannot have by your own constitution, that desire can only be fulfilled in illusion. And that's what the material world is. It's wanting something that we cannot have by our constitution, which is to be the enjoyer and controller, because that position is taken by God. So God facilitates that somehow or other by an illusory potency that lets us fulfill our desires to enjoy and control, or at least have that conception that we are. And now they're describing Sankirtan as the process to actually remember God and turn your consciousness to God and become absorbed in God. And to actually see God, and more than see God, to actually feel God. And that's what's happening in Lord Chaitanya's movement 500 years ago, and that opportunity is still here. Taramadye, Sarvashreshte, Nama Sankirtan, Nira Aparade, Poya, Paya. There's 9 processes of devotional service, and chanting the holy name is the best, because by doing it without offense, one could get Krishna prema. One can awaken his spirit of loving God. Our consciousness now is, it's anti-soul. Soul, even the word soul, it indicates something precious. And what's precious? Pressure is love. Pressure is selflessness. That's what's of value, because that's what's happy. And just like a difference between cooking for another and cooking for yourself. Cooking for someone you love is so much more pleasurable than cooking for yourself. And eating the food that you cooked it with love for Krishna and the devotee is so much a more pleasurable experience than eating the food that you cook for yourself. Right? I remember Vaishesha Prabhu gave a class, And he quoted from some motivational speaker. If you ever have an anxiety, just find someone to serve. Find someone to serve, because that will fill the hole that's lacking in the heart. And that's what Sankirtan is about. It's about enthusing one with that spirit. So he's describing this because he's seeing this kirtan and how many people are being affected. I'm so grateful to the mercy of Prabhupada for bringing me to the Krishna consciousness movement and having this knowledge and having this practice and actually having a process to actually assimilate this crazy world and to actually fill your heart with satisfaction despite how the crazy world moves. I was chanting this morning and I was saying, this is shelter. Because this is an eternal activity because it's related to the soul. And it's something I can always do. Well, what's happening outside, collectively, it's insane what's going on outside. And individually, our lives are crazy. We somehow have this idea that in the future it will get better, but it doesn't. It never gets better because we're never the controller, and therefore we can't be the enjoyer. We can't be the enjoyer as the controller. We can be the enjoyer as the servant. And we can do that right now. So this illusion in the future will get better. It won't get better until we change our consciousness. Until we change our consciousness now. Until we change our consciousness now. The Lord personally appeared in this world. Say, Prabhu āpanā sarva jiva udharite pāiyāche bhakti rasa pritivite. The Lord personally appeared in this world to relish the mellows of devotional service and to deliver all living entities. This is basically our mission. Our mission is to taste and give. To taste devotion and to share devotion. And this is why Lord Chaitanya appeared. Patita pavana hetu tava avatar. Tava, this avatar, patita pavana. Patita pavana. He came petite for fallen, pavana to save the fallen. And boy, do people need saving. People have no idea what they're doing. There's no culture. There's no tradition. Everything is whim. People are people's idea of happiness is dictated by advertising. As if, the Shastra is to give happiness and reduce distress. And we've surrendered to the advertising industry. This gives happiness, and we follow it, and everybody follows it. I have this, I'm sitting right here before this big plate glass window to the street. So I can see people. And I can see that people have no idea what they're doing. You walk down New York, in the streets of New York, do people have an idea where they're going? Who they are? When Sanatana Goswami, who was the chief minister of West Bengal, when he surrendered to Lord Chaitanya, because he was very learned. He knew Sanskrit, he knew Persian, Arabic. He was so learned. He said, people call me a learned man, but I do not know where I've come from. I do not know who I am. I do not know where I am going. Look at New York City. Do the people know where they're going? Do they know who they are? What can be more important than self-realization? Because unless you know what you're made of and you know what you're made for, how will you know what to do? And if you don't know what to do, how can you be in harmony with yourself? What is suffering? Suffering is the symptom of a crime against nature. A fish suffers when it's outside of water because it's gone against nature. And we suffer when we don't love God, and which is inclusive of other living entities. When we suffer when we're not in the mood of service. We suffer when we're selfish. And there used to be traditions of knowledge that would take people conditioned with desires and put them in a frame of reference of some civilization where they can become purified, where they can be peaceful, when they can recognize God. So Vidavendasta has this image, how wonderful it is. How wonderful it is. People taking to this Sankirtan. Konva tahane raja karitanu bhoy yamakali adiyandra britya vedakai. What can a king do to him, and who can instill fear in him? The Vedas declare that even Yamaraj and time are his servants. So this is the controller. What fear there can be. We have fear when things go against our desire and we have no control over it. We fear the future because we can't control the future, and therefore it's going to move in a way against our attachments. Of course, if you make that very shift of faith from the faith of trying to enjoy the world to the faith of trying to serve the world, then there's no fear, because you can serve the world in any circumstance. It doesn't matter how the external moves. So one who has that mood of devotion, he becomes a boy. He becomes fearless. What is there to fear? Everything is moving by the will of God. Whatever happens is for the best. And that's your future. Your future is God. And if you're the servant of God, you have a good future. But if you're trying to make a permanent place in this material world, you're going to be filled with fear. And it's not just a question of I believe. It's the depth of your conviction, by the depth of your practice. And we're challenged. But a devotee becomes fearless. What's the whole Bhagavatam is based on that question. What is the duty of a man who's about to die, and what should he not do? And the answer is interesting, because the answer interprets the question. What is the duty of a man who's about to die? What should he not do? So the answer interprets the question. If you want, you're asked, what are you asking? If you want to be fearless at the time of death, Harinam Anu Kirtanam. You know, I'm like everyone else, I've gone through my trials and tribulations in life, sometimes heavier than others. I remember there was one particular really heavy time. I mean, it was 25, 30 years ago. And I just took shelter of the holy name of Krishna. I was in Gita Nagari. I was down at the cabin taking shelter. I was just chanting. And then I had a realization that the activity I'm doing and the person who is doing it will not end with the body. And that gave me some solace, some fearlessness. But when you do things not on the basis of the soul, but on the basis of the false conception of the self, it ends with the body. It ends with the body. And therefore it's filled with Vayam Dvitiya Biniveshita Shat. Vayam, fear, Dvitiya, duality. Shat arises. Vayam Dvitiya Biniveshita Syat. It arises from what? A smriti. It rises from the false conception of the self, which is temporary and always being threatened with non-existence. Death is the illusion of non-existence. One who lives on the platform of the soul and the identity that he has in doing that, it doesn't end with the body. So now vidavendasta is saying Lord Chaitanya is just chanting, and this king, he could change it, but what can he fear from the king? Who can instill fear in him? Because not only is he in the mood of a devotee, but he's actually God. And the things that cause fear, which is time, and yamaraj, which is the fruits of our karma, they're under him. Swachande Karina Shabaloy Shankirtan Sarvaloka Chudamani Sri Sachinandana. Out of his own sweet will, Sri Sachinandana, the crest jewel of all living entities, continued to perform Sankirtan with everyone. He wasn't going to stop. He's God. He's not going to stop. Atruka tahana boy tahane dekite yeteka aisi loka chatur dika hoite. What to speak of the Lord, even those who came from the four directions to see him became fearless. So someone with confidence, conviction, communicates that conviction to others. Taharai keho boy nakare rajare henase ananda diachena sabakare. No one had any fear of the king. Such was the ecstasy bestowed on everyone by the Lord. That's ecstasy. To be fearless is ecstasy. We're fearful. We are going to die. One day, all our attachments will be gone, and it could happen at any time. We live in a world of fear to the extent that we identify with the false conception of the self. It can be taken at any minute. I don't know what I would think now. What would my consciousness be if I didn't believe in God, who's the controller? My God, what I think could happen in the world now. My God, what can happen in the world now? And what is happening in the world now? Yajyapiha sarvaloka parama agana tatapiha dekhiya Caitanya-bhāgavata Antya-khaṇḍa janma lokira sarira yamakari bhayanahi kedaya rajare. Although the people were all completely uneducated, after seeing Lord Chaitanya, they experienced such happiness that they were not afraid of Yamaraj, what to speak of the king. So these were simple people. They didn't have deep Shastric knowledge. But just seeing the confidence of Lord Chaitanya, they weren't going to be afraid of even death, what to speak of the king. Nirantara sarvaloka kari hari dvani kare muke arakona shabda nahi shuni. They all constantly chanted the name of Hari. Indeed, no other sound could be heard coming from their mouths. Hena mati mahaprabhu vaikunta ishvara sankirtan kari sarva lokira bitara. In this way, Mahaprabhu, the Lord of Vaikuntha, performed Sankirtan in the midst of the general populace. I really appreciate Vidavendasta because it's not easy to compose verse. prose is easier than poetry in one sense, because you're more restricted. Besides communicating something properly, you have to have proper rhyme, you have to have proper meter, you have to have proper rhyme. This is what so this is Kaviraj. They're kings of poets. They can do these things. But I appreciate it because he's just repeating the same things in different ways. Lord Chaitanya did kirtan. Lord Chaitanya was in ecstasy. These are the symptoms of his ecstasy. And you got to spend so much time writing another verse. Mani Kichu, Chinta, Palina, Bhaktigan, Janilena, Antaryamishri, Sachinandana, as a super soul in everyone's heart. Sri Chaitanya, Sri Sachinandana, that's Chaitanya, realized that his devotees are a little bit worried. So this is a very important point in spiritual life, that God sees our heart. And it's our heart that gives God pleasure. That's how the world, because God enjoys love of Godhead. So it's our heart that gives God pleasure. So God is focused on our heart, and he wants to change our heart. And because he also has relationship, he's considerate and concerned. That's what relationship means with someone. You're considerate of someone and you're concerned for someone. That's what relationship is. Selfish people are not like that. We don't like them. Maybe we do, but we wish they would change. Considerate and concerned. Ishat Hasya Kichu Bhaya Prakasya Lagila Kohite Prabhu Maya Guchaya. The Lord smiles. He somewhat returned to external consciousness and began speaking to remove their doubts. This is very, very interesting point, that the highest level of consciousness makes no distinctions between anyone. Basically, you see your bhav in everyone. Atmavan manyate jagat. Atmavan manyate jagat. You see the world, how you feel, and on you're so absorbed that your consciousness is absorbed in that mood of devotion, and it invokes such humility in your heart, because devotion is this hankering to serve God, and it creates this feeling of a need that makes you feel that in your heart you don't have it. You don't even have devotion. So when you become absorbed, you don't have that conception that you're advanced. And then you see everyone through your own bhava. And therefore you see everyone serving Krishna better than me. But to preach Krishna consciousness and teach, you have to make distinctions. So you have to come from the uttam, the topmost platform, to the madhyam platform, where you make four distinctions. You worship God, make friends with the devotees, you preach to the innocent. I always get fascinated with this family across the street. Anyway, I can't get into it, but one day I wish you could see what I'm seeing out there. So it comes to that platform, and avoid those who are inimical. So Lord Chaitanya is so absorbed, now he has to come out of that consciousness, because the concern for people necessitates that he helps them. And he has to take the position of teacher. The Lord smiled as he somewhat returned to external consciousness and began speaking to remove their doubts. The Lord said, "You are afraid, but why would the king want to see me? I will meet anyone who desires to meet me, but I have not found that everyone wants to see me. So why are you afraid? If the king wants to see me, I will go see him. How can the king say he wants to see me? What power does the king have to say such things? The king will say that he wants to see me only if I inspire him to do so. Otherwise, what power does he have to see me? Even the Vedas cannot see me after intense search." So now he comes from that ecstatic platform of the devotee, and now he comes to the form of discrimination, and his understanding is, I'm also God. So what can that king do? And sarvasya chaham hidisani vishto matasmatir gyanam apoanam cha. I am situated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, forgetfulness, and knowledge. So what can they do to me? And this is why a real devotee is very humble, because he's an instrument of God. And when you're an instrument, and we all are instruments, and we're instruments, what you accomplish and the inspiration to do so comes from God. And therefore, sometimes he can just pull it away. I've had that. I became proud of my gift of gab, and then nothing comes out. Because it has to come from the soul, from God. So he's saying, not only the king can't see me, Pantastu koti satavatsara sampragam yo vayor atapi manaso munipungavanam. Pantastu koti, millions of births by the speed of mind. One can't touch the tips of God's toes. God is not physical distance. The spiritual world, it's another dimension that's crossed by the mechanism of faith. It's revealed to us. And if you don't have that, then you cannot see God, no matter what you do. No matter how learned you are, no matter how powerful you are. Vedeshu durlabam, adurlabam atma bhakto. Vedeshu durlabam. It's very difficult by the Vedas. Adurlabam. It's very simple. Atma bhakto. If you have devotion. Because to see God means that God reveals himself to you, as does any person. A person cannot be known simply by studying or intellect. You have to love a person, and then a person may choose to reveal himself to you. So you can't see God just by your eyes. Premanjana charita bhakti velochanena sandat sadaiva hidayeshu velokya. When they are coated with the salve of love. Hampakasya sarvasya yoga maya samavrita. I am not manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. God cannot be put under a microscope. The absolute truth only comes to one who has the mood of service. Because seeing is also a matter of consciousness. If someone is great and you're envious of them, do you see them? what to speak of the eyes seeing God. I have incarnated to inaugurate the Sankirtan movement. I will deliver all the fallen souls of this world. So I looked at the list here. I put on participants. So I know every single person who is here today. And I'm very grateful for you all. Jamunajaya, do you have some point today that stuck with you?
Prabhu Maharaj, thank you for class. Yeah, there were quite a few that stuck with me, but I'll say the one that I really love is fearlessness is ecstasy. And I've been loving this story that, am I frozen? I might be frozen. I don't know if I'm frozen, you're frozen, but yeah, I might be frozen. Fearlessness is ecstasy, if anybody can hear me.
We hear you, Jamunajaya.
Oh, okay. Is Mirage frozen? Oh, he's got. Did we lose Maharaj?
Looks like he's trying to get back on. I don't know.
Okay, I'm on, right?
We can hear you.
Okay, Jamunajaya, you want to say it again?
Okay, thanks, Maharaj. I was saying I really appreciated fearlessness is ecstasy. It's just such a great point. You said something like it on Sunday, and just really so profound. And thank you for that. Many others, but I love that one especially.
Okay. I back on, but I actually have to go now because I have a call at 8:30. But thank you all. This is so much fun. And pray for me that my visa comes in the next 2 days, because I found out Friday is a holiday and Saturday and Sunday not open. So I'm trying to get out on the 18th, but if not, whatever Krishna wants, I'm happy. Okay, thank you all. Okay, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindu Bebhacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnave.